What is up? What is up? What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to You're the Vet. I'm so happy that you're continuing to tune into these episodes and listen to all the good information and the stories that these individuals coming to You're the Vet are telling about their lives and their transition and their bounce backs back into the civilian world. So today I bring you just a plethora of knowledge. Mr. Bob Wheeler from clearjobs.net joins us today on You're the Vet. And I can't even put into words how money this conversation is, because so many people out there are looking for the key, the answer, the shortcuts, the secrets into how to get into the workforce. And this is the conversation you're going to want to listen to, because not only is Bob a human resources and recruiting guy who now works in sales with clearjobs.net, he's got a passion for helping other vets better position themselves in the job market. And that's why he came on to You're the Vet, to pass on all this knowledge that he's accumulated over the years. And I just tap into him, and I wish I had extra time to tap into him, but I tried to get as much little nuggets of information that I could from him. So throughout this conversation, we talk about positioning yourself to meet the people and striking when the iron's hot. The best place is the EAS. Setting up yourself for your twilight tours, what seems to be a common topic that transition coaches are coming on here and speaking about. We talk about networking and finding the people that you want to associate yourself with professionally, and going to the places that they go to, and joining organizations and following them on social media. We talk about the power of LinkedIn. He talks about using LinkedIn as a Rolodex, which may or may not be showing age. But, for those of you tuning in that don't know what a Rolodex is, it's just this massive circular thing that people used to put phone numbers and business cards in. So he talks about being inquisitive about what it is that you may or may not want to pursue after the service. And really like learning how compensation works outside of the salary. We talk about clearances and expiration dates and just there's a lot of information in this hour of conversation. And so with that being said, you can contact Bob anytime on LinkedIn. Look for Bob Wheeler at clearjobs.net. You can also contact him through Twitter. His handle is @SailorDoc. You can follow clearjobs.net on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and look for new posts or job fairs coming up in your area. And if you're an employer looking to hire those with security clearances, definitely tap into Bob. Bob is the guy you want to talk to. I know I didn't say much on this, but if you have a security clearance and you're listening to this podcast, go join clearjobs.net right now and get on their database. It's free, and it's going to put you in a position that you wish you had have done long time ago if you're sitting here on your couch right now. But I'll let him talk more about that. Bob Wheeler from clearjobs.net. This conversation is money. Okay. Well, Mr. Bob Wheeler, I am super excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us at You're the Vet, because you have information that veterans that are leaving the service and veterans who have already left the service, you have information that they need to succeed in their employment journeys. You have information that they need to succeed in just maybe if they're looking to transition from a job to another job right now. You've got that information. And what's beautiful about it is that you're a veteran yourself. So welcome to the show. And why don't you kind of give the audience a background of who Bob Wheeler is?
Sure, Robert. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to help out anybody that's looking to transition out of the service. My story, just kind of really briefly, is I was in the Navy for 20 years. Most of that time in the Navy was I was a hospital corpsman, so most of that time was actually spent with Marine Corps units. Did a lot of time at Camp Lejeune. Did a couple of combat deployments to Afghanistan during those times. One of the things that I think is unique about my time, though, was I didn't join the Navy until I was 24. I'd actually already gone to college before I joined the Navy, and I was a pretty lousy student, to tell you the truth. And so I couldn't really find a job, or not a job that I liked, at least, before I joined the Navy. So when I joined the Navy, I had already been in that situation. I said I wasn't going to get out till I was ready to find another job and ready to be marketable. And within the 20 years, I eventually kind of weaseled my way into things like human resources. I got an extra degree in human resources. My last 3 years in the Navy was recruiting doctors up in Baltimore, Maryland. And then I thought for sure I was going to be a recruiter when I got out. So I started networking with other recruiters in that area. And then it turns out that, and we can tell the story in a little bit, the job that I have now, through meeting people, I actually work for a company called clearjobs.net, which is a job board. And so I'm in sales, and I sell access to this job board and job fairs to other recruiters. So I'm selling to HR people. So some of the sales skills I learned as a recruiter in the Navy, some of the recruiting skills I learned in the Navy, some of the instructor skills I learned in the Navy, all those kind of go into what I do now. But I've been at clearjobs.net since 2014, which was the same year that I retired. This is the first and the only full-time job I've had since I got out of the Navy.
Do you find it hard to sell, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but do you find it hard to sell veterans that have security clearances to companies who are looking for people with security clearances?
Well, it's kind of unique in the sense that, we're a very niche market. So the companies that are using our services, everything from the big companies like the Lockheed Martins and the Khakis and General Dynamics and Booz Allens, all the way down to the mom and pop, organizations that only have 4 employees, but they're looking for government contractors. So they need people with security clearances. So the folks that are using our site which is free for job seekers that are posting resumes or coming to job fairs, they're kind of leveraging those things. I will say that the market for people with security clearances from the employer side, it's getting tougher and tougher to find those people because, number one, the government's making it harder for people to get clearances if you don't already have one. And then number two, for a lot of the people on the higher technical end, there's a lot of money to be made outside of government contracting as well. So if you're a cybersecurity person, for example, it used to be that all the jobs were in government contracting, but now you've got a lot of jobs on the private sector. And when people with a clearance leave to go to the private sector, that's one less person with a clearance in that talent pool, which makes it harder for those companies that need them to find those people. So they kind of have to fight for those people a lot more.
Gotcha.
So if it's the right company, it's not a hard sell. And then honestly, if it's the wrong company, we don't talk to them anyway. So it's really not much of an issue.
What would a wrong company be? Somebody who's not. Go ahead.
A wrong company would be somebody who's not looking for, you might need people, but they don't need a security clearance.
Gotcha.
So if a security clearance isn't the kind of person you're looking for, then there's no, or a company that maybe has people with security clearances but isn't winning contracts, doesn't have any need to hire right now. That would be another wrong company type thing.
Gotcha. Now, normally I would try to dig into to who you are in order to kind of build rapport with the listeners. However, you have so much more on the back end that I want to tap into. So briefly, you did say you went to college and got your degree and you joined at 24. So I went through the question that I had asked you and I got lost in your story because it is fantastic. And I would love, you're talking about you went from college and you were selling ads in newspapers. And I'll tell you right now that I get calls from people that, trying to sell me ads at like car wash kiosks and stuff like that. And I know it's hard. That's got to be a hard thing to do. So it had to build up some character, right? Being in sales, trying to put yourself through college at the same time.
Well, I was in sales after I got out of college because it was the job that I kind of fell into. And what I learned from that was it was a lousy job. It was, sales, and specifically sales. It has to do with the company that you're working for, and then the product that you're selling, in the manner that it works for. So as great as it is working for clearjobs.net, it was lousy working for that company, that newspaper ad sales position that I had when I first came out of college.
Yeah.
Which was why I finally said, there's got to be something better than this. My dad was in the Navy, and it turned out great for him. Maybe that's what I should do before I get too old. And so I joined the Navy.
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to be in sales.
Why didn't you go?
Never.
Why didn't you go?
Why didn't I think I was going to be in sales?
No. Why didn't you go? Why didn't you go officer?
Oh, because I have a GPA of 2.1.
Gotcha. And
a degree in social sciences, which, and in my last job in the Navy recruiting officers, I came to realize that was very true, that I wasn't officer material, at least not at that time.
Yeah.
I had opportunities later on to put in, officer packages if I wanted to, but by that time I was already a chief petty officer, and I liked the way my career was going, and what I was doing. So, but I really, the idea that just because you have a college degree you can be an officer, that's a myth, and it was a myth back in 1994 as much as it's a myth now in 2017.
I can think about probably a handful of people now that have had their degrees that went enlisted, and yeah, they may not have been great officers, or even might not have enjoyed it. So that's interesting to hear that. And then you were a corpsman, so that, I don't want to say kept the excitement up, because I know you deployed to Afghanistan and had to go through all that. But being a corpsman attached to a Marine Corps unit, you don't get to do that as an officer. So that's a experience, right?
Yeah, unless you're a physician. I mean, there was our Marine Corps battalion in Afghanistan. We had 40 some odd corpsmen and 2 doctors. So so the difference between officers and enlisted was huge. But the officers don't get a chance to do that quite as much. They do on occasion, but not nearly as much. Did
you have a specialty as a corpsman?
No, I did not. I was just a field medical technician, just a regular grunt corpsman. And the other things that I did was instructor tours. So I had those types of specialty ratings, but that's not a medical specialty. That was just from being an instructor at a couple different places.
Yeah. And did you choose the medical field, or is that something that you got placed into?
I chose the medical field because that's what my dad did.
Okay.
I completely did not choose to go with the Marine Corps. When they sent me to the Marine Corps the first time, that was a shock. That was in 1995, But what do? You just say, yes, sir, and execute the orders.
So you
turned out it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, but I wasn't excited about it at the time. No doubt.
So you had a 2.1 in college, but you were able to study the body and major arteries, and I mean, was it just you felt?
I was a lousy student. I wasn't stupid. I just didn't go to class. I wasn't, I was 18 to 22 years old, and I really wasn't ready for college.
Gotcha.
But I went.
Yeah.
And later on, when I went back and got my master's degree, I got like a 3.9 GPA when I was while I was, serving in the Navy.
Yeah.
Because then I was ready for college. And it meant something to me. I was just. It just shows you this is the correlation between folks coming out of the service too. If you are, when you get into something, if you're not thinking about what you're going to do when you get out of that, whether it's college or whether it's the Marine Corps, eventually you're going to get out, and you're going to have to I don't know what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had that feeling when I came out of college for a few years, I was very cognizant of that while I was in the Navy, that I wasn't going to get out of the service until I was preparing to get out.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes the folks in the service, that the problem is, if you join right out of high school or even right out of college, if you're an officer, if you've never had that feeling of, oh crap, what am I going to do now? And it's one thing to have that feeling when you're 22 years old coming out of college and you can still hang out with your parents for a little bit. That's a whole nother thing to be, 32 years old with a wife and 3 kids and have that feeling because you just got out of the Marine Corps or the Navy and you don't know what you're going to do next, but you've got all these financial obligations.
Yeah.
So I was lucky that I failed early before I joined the Navy, so I didn't fail the second time.
Yeah. Now, you did say in our back and forth that you promised yourself you want to get out of the Navy until you can answer the question, what do you do? Now, what is that?
Well, what I found when I came out of college, people said, what do you do? And I said, I don't know. What do you want me to do? And I found out that nobody would hire me for that, and it really ate at me that I didn't know what I could do. So I said, by the time I'm not going to guess, I can answer that question. And I went through stages in my 20 years where I thought, well, I'm going to go to school and become a surgical technician so I can say that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And then that phase passed. I never went to that school. I didn't get, I didn't apply for that school eventually. But then I got into human resources. And so I said, well, okay, now I want to be in human resources. But I stuck around long enough because I knew I needed to kind of fill in those gaps. Filling in the gaps included going off and recruiting. I did that on purpose, because I wanted to have that for my human resources background. And I eventually said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to recruit when I get out. And it was in preparation for becoming a recruiter that I fell into this job. because I was going to recruiting conferences, learning how to be a good recruiter, when I ran into the chief marketing officer for clearjobs.net, and she said, hey, we've got this position, you'd be great at it. Because we've hired other people with recruiting backgrounds to work in sales because we're selling to recruiters. Mm-hmm. So even though I wasn't setting out to say I'm going to get into sales, I'm still in human resources, and I'm still working with people, with recruiters. So in many senses that I did kind of, end up here on purpose.
Now, you're out there fixing bodies and you get out of Afghanistan. How do you get into recruiting medical personnel? And I didn't know that was a thing. So you're talking about recruiting doctors?
Well, it was the way the Navy works is the people they put in those recruiting jobs to find doctors and nurses mm-hmm. and other medical are people that have medical experience in the Navy. So if you're a chief petty officer, hospital corpsman, that's a position that they like to put you in. They also take some nurse corps officers and things like that, because when you're talking to people who are going to become doctors in the Navy, you need to be able to really explain how Navy medicine works, and it's a little more complicated than just being in the Navy. And then you also need to be able to speak the medical lingo when you're talking about looking for a orthopedic surgeon versus a gastroenterologist or something like that.
Oh, so those
to being able to have those.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so that's the reason they take hospital corpsmen. Those are billets in the recruiting world that are specifically for hospital corpsmen or other medical professionals to go do. So I took one of those positions and I took it up in Baltimore, Maryland, because I wanted to make sure I was in a place where I could network with people. Yeah.
So the individuals being recruited, are they students coming out of college, or are they already civilians that you're trying to tap into?
Most of the ones we talked about, if you become a doctor in the Navy, it's students that are in college and we pay for medical school.
Gotcha.
That's actually pretty easy recruiting. You just got to find the right person who wants to do it and has the good grades and stuff.
Yeah.
The harder thing was finding doctors for the reserves, because then you've got to find people who were already licensed physicians. And that's more like, just like in the civilian world, there's campus recruiters who go out and talk to college kids for their first job. And then there's also the more what they call a technical recruiter, who's somebody out there looking to find that really hard to find skill set, whether it's a doctor or whether it's a cybersecurity professional or a mm-hmm. Network engineer or something like that. Those are two different types of recruiters who are doing two different types of jobs. Not all recruiters are created equal in that sense.
Correct. Now, you said that you went to seminars and conferences to focus on becoming a good mm-hmm. recruiter. What skills can you practice for this? So how do you focus on becoming a good recruiter?
Well, there's a few skills that you can have. And first of all, when I wanted to learn how to be a better recruiter, I joined the name of the recruiting organization was called the Baltimore Area Recruiters Network. And it's an affiliate of something called Recruit DC. But these were professional organizations of recruiters in the area. And I was like, I need to go to these things because I really don't know what I'm doing. This is a good place to learn. Mm-hmm. And so I started going to those meetings and talking to actual recruiters. And it turns out that I was a big help to them because I could explain military stuff. They were really into trying to hire veterans. Mm-hmm. And I was the only veteran they knew, for a lot of those folks. But then they taught me about how things work in the recruiting world. A lot of the things that it takes to be a good recruiter, they do kind of translate out of the military. If you're a good speaker, it takes a little bit of instructional design to be able to talk to people in a systematic way. A lot of organization, because recruiting has to do a lot with time management, keeping up with things as far as who you're talking to, when, and moving people along through a process. The most important thing about recruiting, I think, though, is to be inquisitive, in the sense that if you're recruiting for, it was easy for me to recruit doctors in the sense I knew a lot about medicine. But when I talk to somebody, a lot of these people with security clearances that we talk to now, cybersecurity is a big, big, big deal, So you need to be curious about those things and learn more and more about what it takes to be in, like, say, the cybersecurity field. Or if you're going to search for truck drivers, mm-hmm. Where do truck drivers hang out? What do they do? You kind of get into their mindset and find out how to reach out to those people. Because as a recruiter, you're looking for, how do I find somebody? Mm-hmm. And then how do I talk to that person? Mm-hmm. How do I find out what it is that they need? And then how do I tell them about, that my company can meet their need?
Yeah.
And if you can do those things, then you can be successful.
It's funny that out of college, you kind of did something similar, you know, the sales process, and then you're trying to sell this time. And it's night and day, you know, from 20 years, what 20 years can do, right? So you grew up a lot.
Yeah.
But so
I did grow up a lot.
You do, you're recruiting, and then you get to this point in your enlistment where it's time to think about transition, right? At 20 years, you retired. Is there a process for a billet like yours to go the full 30? And if there is that why you started thinking about transition?
Well, at my rank as a chief, as an E7, I could have stayed for 24.
Okay.
Even if I would have never gotten promoted again, I could have stayed for 24.
Okay.
But I made the decision when I took the orders to go recruiting up in Baltimore, because I'd spent the previous 10 years in Camp Lejeune, and I knew that that's not a great place. You know, that part of North Carolina is not a great place for meeting people other than other Marines and sailors.
Yeah.
You know, so I said, okay, I'm going to go to Baltimore, and I'm going to retire. I'm going to hit 21 there, and I'm going to retire there, because I knew that if I'd have stuck around, I probably would have gone back to an operational tour, probably would have come back to Camp Lejeune, and then the time I would have gotten out would have been it'd been tougher, because I wouldn't be around people that I knew and they were professionally helping me. You know, and the other thing that I learned this earlier in my career too, that it's all about timing, because I had been in an instructor billet when I was an E6, just maybe E7, and I had a lot of people say, "Hey, we'd love to hire you, you know, for our company," because I was doing a lot of product demonstration. But at that time, I'd only been in the Navy for 15 years, and I wasn't going to get out at 15.
Yeah.
You know, so I realized that it's not just who you know and what you can do, but when do you know them in your life and in your career?
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't have gone back 5 years later and called those people and said, "Hey, remember 5 years ago when you talked to me and you said that I'd be great for your company?" You know, that's too much time has passed. So you got to kind of strike while the iron's hot, and you got to put yourself in a position where you can meet people. So when I checked into Baltimore, I mean, I'll never forget, the command master chief looked at me and he said, "You know, are you just here to retire?" Because a lot of people do those types of things.
Mm-hmm. And
I said, "Well, yeah, I'm here. This is going to be my last tour, but I'll tell you what, I'm not just here to retire." I said, "You know, I want to be a recruiter when I get out." And that's what I wanted to do. I said, "So I'm be the best damn recruiter you've got. You know, I'm not here just to be on the road program and just retire on active duty and just whatever. But, you know, I'm not here to look to put on senior chief.
Yeah.
I'm here to become a great recruiter." And to be honest, that probably didn't help my promotion possibilities, you know, because there were other people that were doing, you know, as good a job as me, you know, at that command, who did want to go on and become senior chiefs and master chiefs. So when it came time to ranking people, once you kind of let the cat out of the bag that you don't plan on sticking around, it's going to hurt your career a little bit.
Yeah.
But you just got to accept that.
Since I put the book out last year, I've learned that, because I didn't have that process. I was, I'd say, forced out is, I guess, the easiest way to say it. So I didn't have the opportunity to make the choice. But the more people I meet that had the opportunity and they make the decision, like, okay, you know, this is my decision to get out, they have all told me that their units have turned a blind eye to how they're being treated within the ranks, or, you know, kind of a loss of respect, or kind of like you're turning your back on them, even though you gave them 20 years, you know, like it. I'm finding that that's a normal thing, which is unfortunate, but that's neither here nor there. One thing you just said kind of caught my eye, though, and because I always say you're not working unless you're networking, and you're talking about networking and timing with the networking, right? So knowing people at the right time. I never had actually put those two processes together. I have always thought, well, if I keep in touch or like send, you know, holiday cards, or, you know, hey, just wanted to check in, how are things, this, that, and the other, I thought that was good enough. But you can actually fall off people's radars, right? And that's what you're saying at 15.
Yeah, and you fall off their radar because they no longer see what you're doing.
Gotcha.
They know you're a good person. Hey, Robert's a great person, Bob's a nice guy type thing. But they don't see what you're doing professionally. And when it comes to, you know, offering you a job, or not necessarily even offering you a job, but just kind of keeping their eyes out for you for a job, they need to know what you're doing.
I'm asking because I just had a conversation last week with another gentleman, and he had brought up when you're OCONUS, right? If you're stationed in Guam, Okinawa, Germany, like you really don't have you don't have the opportunity to be eyes on with some of these other corporations. However, there are corporations out there like General Dynamics, right? Who they have people out in Okinawa, and if you serve your 3 years there or 2 years, however long you're out there, and you make friends or professional relationships with some of these corporations, is there a way, if you're still staying in, is there a way that you recommend that you can still keep your foot in the door even though time has passed?
Yeah, there are some ways. You can use. First of all, the first thing you need to do is you need to talk to people who are not inside the military. And even if that's a government contractor, so if there's somebody that you're in your shop, that works for General Dynamics or works for, whether it's a big organization or a small organization, talk to those people. Ask them about what they're doing. Ask them about their company. Learn about their company, and just develop that friendship, right? Because that way they're going to know who you are a little bit. And even if that person, let's say that you're on Guam, that person may not have a lot of pull on who gets hired, but those people will have a lot of insight on what it takes to get hired. They can tell you what the process is like, whether you should apply just a regular application, whether you should need a referral. They can maybe connect you with the right recruiter. The other thing they can do is they can sometimes find out where the work is going to be. So, if you are in Guam, they might say, well, but you're getting orders back to California. They might know what's going on in California too. Gotcha. So the first step is just getting out of your bubble and talking to people. Yeah. Some other things that you can do is if these types of people are on LinkedIn, I would tell you to make sure you have a LinkedIn profile, get on LinkedIn so that that way you can kind of keep that Rolodex going. And then the other thing that you can do is, depending on your job, now this is depending on your organization, but I tell people join organizations that are out there, and follow them on social media. So if you're a radio operator, right, there's an organization called AFCEA, the Armed Forces Communications Electronics Association. Join that organization, because that's the kind you're going to learn what's going on in the industry. You're going to learn the lingo. You're going to see other people, and you can even connect with those people on their LinkedIn groups and on their Facebook groups, stuff like that. But the mistake people make is they sit inside their bubble until they get out, and then they decide, now I'm going to go meet people. Yeah. When there's all these people that are already around you, there's organizations that you can join ahead of time. There's things that you can do, whether you're in Camp Lejeune or whether you're in Guam and Okinawa or, Sicily or whatever. Because that's what's going to help you figure out not only what you know, but it'll help you realize where the gaps are in your skill sets. Okay. Because a lot of times folks come out of the service and they think, well, I've got everything I need. And they don't realize that, they've got A, B, and C, but the company's looking for A, B, C, D, and E. Yeah. So the sooner you can find out you're missing D and E, then you can start to figure out, well, how do I go about getting those things? Do I need to get another certification? Do I need to, is this the kind of job that didn't need a degree in the military, but no kidding, really needs a degree on the outside? You know? Learn those types of things so that you can fix those gaps before you get out.
So on top of that, what else would you recommend, or even how long before you start transitioning would you recommend getting to work? What should an active duty or an officer be doing prior to transitioning to EASing, however you want to say it?
That timing question is a great question, and we see people asking that all the time at some of the groups that I'm in. I think that in the big picture, the minute you step on the yellow footprints, you should be thinking about what you're going to do when you get out. Yeah. Because you never know when it's going to happen. You never know when you're not going to get a chance to reenlist. You never know when you're going to break your leg and they're going to med set you. So in some aspects, you should always be having that idea of what am I going to do when I get out? Because there's, what's real is that whether you're in the Army, the Air Force, Navy, the Marine Corps, you can't be in there forever. I mean, it's a law. Eventually, they're going to kick you out. Yeah. Whether you stay for 3 years or 30, no kidding, you're going to get kicked out someday, right? So you've got to always be thinking about that, and you're always kind of adjusting your plans, because if you're on your first enlistment, what you're thinking about is different than if you're on you're hitting your 20-year mark. So you're always thinking about those things, and then as you go through those things, get out of the bubble, talk to people who are doing Find out what other people in your industry are doing on the outside so that you can speak the right language. And then every time you re-enlist, think to yourself, where is this going to put me personally and professionally, 4 years from now?
Yeah.
Because an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old, that life is different than a 26 and a 30-year-old, or a 35 or a 40-year-old or something like that.
Yeah.
So you're always thinking about those things. But then in the very end, when you start to really get down to it, when you start to say, I have a really good plan. Number one, try to make it to where you can have your last duty station somewhere where you can talk to people who are doing the same business as you, someplace that you want to be. You'd rather have your last duty station be a place around a big city if you can. Tampa, DC, Seattle, San Diego, something like that. Especially if you don't mind staying there in those areas. And then at least within 18 months of getting out, you really want to start getting that mindset of, I'm going to be getting out. Tell your command, I'm getting out. Commit to that. Don't be wishy-washy about, well, I'm going to see if I get promoted. If you're half-assing it, you're going to be in trouble at the end. About when people start asking questions like, when should I start, going to job fairs? I'd say about a year out. Start going to job fairs about a year out, because when you go to job fairs, it's not all job fairs are the same. Some very like our job fairs, people actually get hired at because they're so technical.
Yeah.
But even then, you want to go there, even if you're not ready to get hired, because you want to go when you aren't ready to be hired. Because then when you screw it up, it's cool. You're learning. You're learning how to dress. You're learning how to talk to people. You're learning questions to ask. Because you're going to need that experience when the rubber hits the road. About 6 months to 3 months out, that's when you can maybe start looking at people who are, no kidding, starting to hire, and start looking, is this a good position for me? But don't freak out if they don't want to talk to you too much, because honestly, most jobs that are out there, the reason they exist is because there's a need, and they're not going to wait for 6 months for you. They're just not. They're not going to be like, hey, sorry, hey, John, you're an awesome person, but we need a truck driver, or we need a computer programmer, or whatever it is. We need it today, not 6 months from now.
Yeah.
So don't freak out about those things, but you can start to get in that application process a little bit earlier by then.
Yeah. So
that when it comes time to really, hit it, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because everything you do, the first time you do it, you're probably going to suck at it.
Yes.
You're going to suck at the first time you go to a job fair. You're going to suck at the first job application you put together. You're going to suck at the first resume you put together.
Yeah.
So do some of those things a few months ahead of time, just to get the practice of doing those things, so that you don't blow a chance, when you really need it, because, you failed to make a good impression because you couldn't do any of those things after you got out.
Now,
kind of a long-winded answer. I hope that
No. You know what? It's perfect, because I had a question on the perfect recipe for landing the job, if you were to kind of have a recipe, and that kind of falls in there, and you can break that down even further about LinkedIn and finding job fairs and stuff like that. So there's other processes in there that I know I can sit here and ask questions all day about, but no, it was a very good summary of what the process should be, from day one. And it's hard because you go in at 17 sometimes, 17, 18. I went in as a 17-year-old kid. So I knew after my first tour in Afghanistan, my only tour in Afghanistan, that just like you said, there is an inevitability, and that is you're going to get out. And so I started college in 2002. I didn't finish my bachelor's until 2014, but that's not important. But
yeah,
the process of looking for a job to get out is pretty complex. What do you recommend that you take notes on? Because I'm sure you see tons and tons and tons of resumes where it's like loaded up with, I've got a SORCOM, a NAM, I was the NCOIC for 14 debts and this, that, and the other. Can you give a brief explanation about what it is that people should be annotating and transferring over? Because how I learned about it was that there's a master resume. When I went through TAPS and TAMP, they said create this master resume of everything you've ever done, and then be very selective about what you choose to put onto your resume depending on what job it is. So what Can you kind of polish that up for people?
And what you're saying, Robert, is absolutely right. I mean, and from the recruiter standpoint, it's the same thing. They want you to answer the question. So the job description is, this is what the company needs, and they want you to very, efficiently tell them that you can do those things. So extra stuff, number one, is a resume doesn't have to be a story of your life. And something else that service members need to kind of get a hold of in their brain is that sometimes the coolest things you did are not the most important things for getting a job, and you make the mistake by wearing your veteran label a little bit too proud in some ways when someone says things like, let's just say that they're looking for someone who can, who can drive a truck, for example, or let's say somebody who can fix a truck, or whether you're somebody who can, logistically make sure things get their places on trucks. Some folks in the military say, well, if I tell them that I did it in Afghanistan under combat conditions, certainly if he can drive it under combat, that he can drive it on the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah.
That's not the way people think. Every time that you bring up those types of stories, all you're really doing is you're highlighting a difference. You're telling a story that they can't really relate to.
Gotcha.
And the more you as a job seeker tell stories that the employer can't relate to, they start to say, well, now I can't relate to this person. I don't really know what I'm getting. So you have to speak in their language and keep it very simple. Don't tell them, that you did this while you were getting shot at. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
Unless the job you're applying for is for a government contractor to go back to Afghanistan and do the same thing. Well, then tell that story. Same deal with awards. I see a lot of people that just want to list all these awards and say they got a Navy Achievement Medal or Army Commendation Medal and things like that. Well, first of all, if you just list those awards but don't say why you got them, again, that doesn't mean anything to a civilian.
Yeah.
They don't know. They honestly don't know what any of those things mean.
Yeah.
Right? And especially if it happens to be an Army Commendation Medal for something that has nothing to do with the job that you're doing, you don't even want to put that on there either, because all you're doing is just, again, highlighting a difference.
Yeah.
Now, if you happen to have an award for something that's relevant to the job, then I would say I wouldn't even necessarily list it as an award, but I would make sure that those things that you did that got you the award get listed on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, if you want to, afterwards, you can say awarded Navy Commendation Medal for this project or something like that.
Yeah.
But even then, the name of the award doesn't mean anything to them other than the fact it's an award for most folks.
Yeah.
So the big picture is answer the questions that they're looking for. Tell them why you can do that job. Keep it simple. Don't get into crazy stuff. Don't highlight differences. Don't tell war stories. And again, understand that some of the coolest stuff you did, maybe some of the stuff you're the most proud of that you did in your 5, 10, or 20-year career, doesn't belong on a particular resume.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that what you do is any less important. It just means that
it's not relevant
for this particular job, not required.
Yeah. Now, you educated me on the difference between clearjobs.net and recruiting and staffing agencies. And I wanted to ask, what are the major differences between some of the staffing agencies like Lucas Group, Orion International, Bradley Morris? And for those who are listening, staffing groups when I got out, and a little backstory, when I got out, I ran into my now wife, who was a recruiter for Tech Systems, I think. And so I learned that there were these people looking for nerds like me, because I'm a radar technician, right? So she introduced me to all this. So I was very blessed to have this knowledge very, very soon after getting out. And so that's why I wanted to give the knowledge to other people, because that's something that we don't learn about while we're in. What are the differences between all those, all these other staffing agencies, these recruiters, or are there any differences?
Yeah, that's it. Well, there's differences in the sense of what they do. And I think the bigger question that you're really hitting on, which is a great question, is job seekers are coming out, the veterans need to understand the hiring process, like who does what in that whole process. Because it's not as simple as sometimes people think it is. Some of the groups that you listed, like Orion and Lucas Group and Bradley Morris, those are organizations that they make their money, they're placement firms. So they go out and look for good candidates, and then they then have organizations who need to hire people. They make their money by placing you in those positions. So company XYZ tells Orion, we need to have some mechanics, right? So Orion gets all these mechanics together, and they can talk to them and fix them up and give them the best can, try to get them a job. And when they get hired, they get the money from the company that then just hired you.
Correct.
So that's how they make their money. Free for the job seeker. And a lot of those organizations are very good. They do a very good job. And if you do look at them, I think that, and I'm not an expert, Orion tends to be a little bit heavier on the mechanical wrench turning side. Lucas Group tends to be a little bit more on the management, junior officer type positions, and those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bradley Morris, I'm not sure if they do a little bit of both. I don't know much about them, as much about them, but that's what those places do.
Now, Clear Jobs, though, you are selling.
We're a tool.
The information of who is out there, correct?
Yeah, we're a tool that recruiters and organizations that need to hire people with security clearances use.
But the individual. So the individual.
No,
so me as Sergeant Graves, security clearance, I do not need to reach out to clearjobs.net to make sure I'm in your database, correct?
No, you do. Yeah, you do need to.
Oh, okay.
You absolutely need to. You need to reach out, and it's free to create a profile. But you go in there, you upload a resume, you create a profile that answers just a few basic questions like this is where I live, this is how much money I'm looking for, these are my key skills, how long I've been doing it, those types of things, so that when a company who needs to hire these people, they do we have 3 different ways that we help government contractors find people. We have the resume database. So if Sergeant Graves creates his profile, recruiters can go in there and they can search by keywords, and they can search by location and clearance level and things like that to find people that say, I'm looking for radar technicians, worked on this type of a piece of equipment, that are looking to work in the Florida area, for example.
Yeah.
They can do that kind of a thing. Then they reach out and contact you and say, hey, Robert, looks like that you have a position on your profile on clearjobs.net. Looks like you might be a good fit. We'd love to talk to you, kind of take it from there. The second thing that government organizations can do, or government contractors can do with us, is they can post jobs on our site. So you, as Sergeant Graves, Robert Graves, can go and see, and they can find a wanted, like a wanted ad, help wanted.
Yeah.
Just like anything else, and you can say, hey, there's a position, looks like I'm a good fit. I'm going to go ahead and apply for that, and then the application goes right to them. And then the third thing that we do is we host job fairs. So it's free for job seekers like yourself or anybody else to come to the job fairs, but the organizations who are looking to hire, they pay money for the ability to be there, to have a booth there.
Gotcha.
So they show up, and then they can talk to people. They also get everybody's resume that shows up, and then they can make some hires. So we do all 3 of those things, and not every organization uses all of those things.
Yeah.
Some jobs do better with job postings. They don't find as many folks with the resume. They put the job postings out there, and they say, I'm looking for a security guard, and they get lots and lots of applications.
Yeah.
Other positions that are the more technical, really high level positions, they don't even post the job. They'll just do the resume searching, because the people they're looking for, those people with a full scope polygraph clearance, and they're Java developers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They want to just call those people and just have that conversation.
Gotcha.
And then the job fairs are those types of things that each organization that does it, especially for the smaller organizations, a lot of it depends on timing. Are they hiring now?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to spend, a couple $1,000s to be at a job fair, you're not going to be there just to show your face.
Of course.
And just say, hey, look how great we are. So it kind of comes back to follow the money.
Yeah.
What people don't really realize about a site like ours is that the employers are paying money to have access.
Correct.
So they're not just posting jobs. They're not just going to job fairs just for PR.
Yeah.
If you go to job fairs where everybody can be there for free, including the employers, or it's a very low price sometimes, that's when you might see some people that are just saying, hey, it's all veterans job fairs, show up, and then you find out that the jobs that you're looking for aren't there.
Now, I'm constantly asked about other than tech jobs, because there was some, obviously, what you know, right? And I knew radar, and so I knew technical skills, and I knew security clearances. That was my life. So there are obviously a majority of the veterans coming out that don't have technical jobs, right? Or maybe they have technical jobs, but maybe they didn't need security clearances, or maybe they were admin or something like that. Are there agencies for individuals who don't have technical jobs? Because I don't know about them, and I'd like to share that if there are.
Yeah, well, as far as agencies go, I mean, there's going to be there's a lot of programs out there that they can help folks. I mean, I know that, and they're in a bigger sense. They're more like mentorship programs.
Okay.
I've heard. I know from experience. I did American Corporate Partners, which is a mentorship program that was free. I would encourage people to check that out. I've also heard some good things about a program called Veterati, which is where basically in both of those programs, you say, this is what I do, and those programs connect you with somebody on the outside who does similar things. They may not necessarily hire you, but they can say, this is what you need to be doing in this field. This is how you need to network. This is who you need to be talking to. Let me help you with a resume. Let me help you understand the industry type thing.
Yeah.
So there's those types of things. But the less technical your skills, then in some ways the harder it is to find a job because you don't know what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just saying, again, that kind of goes back to what I said before. If you're just walking around saying, hey, what do you need me to do? I can do anything.
Yeah.
Because that's what you can do in the Marine Corps. I mean, really, to be brutally honest, you can do along many years in the military if all you do is show up on time and wear the right uniform and you're sober.
Yeah.
If you do those three things, you can last for 3 or 4 years. You may never get promoted,
Yeah.
but you'll always get paid.
Yeah.
And if that's all you do while you're in the service, when you go to get out, you're not going to find that same job on the outside.
Yeah.
So it does get harder when you don't know what you want to do with your life. And that's just a fact. And there's no way around it. So you have to be always thinking about, what do I want? You can't get comfortable while you're in the service thinking that this is easy.
Yeah.
I'll think about it later. You've got to always be working at that.
Yeah, absolutely. The process of my transition, when I knew I was getting out, my units or my shop, my MOS, we always knew that, hey, we can get out and make 100,000, this, that, and the other. And then during my transition, while I was looking for work, I actually got into a fight with my my roommate / best friend about not taking the jobs that I felt had undervalued my experience. I had set a number. I'd set this number, 50,000, out of nowhere. I didn't, it was just a number. It was more than what I was making while I was in. And when I finally found a company that met that number, I actually found that I undervalued myself. So can you tell people listening how to know their worth before they go into these processes?
Yeah, that's your experience is very common. And one of the best ways to learn about your worth is, and it goes back to what I said before, even while you're in the service, talk to people in your industry. And the more you get to know people, the more you can kind of get a real sense for, what it is that people on the outside are making. And you can go so far as if you're really good friends and say, hey, you can ask them, hey, how much do you make?
Yeah.
And they might give you just a ballpark figure. But the other thing you can do is you can get a good sense for, hey, I know that he's got a spouse and 2 kids and he drives a pretty good car. You can get a feel for what their standard of living is like.
Yeah.
Type thing with those types of jobs. But the other thing is you can really ask those questions and say, especially if they were veterans, but even if they weren't, you can ask, what is it that I need? Because you get that line from lots of people who tell you, from those same recruiters that put you in the Marine Corps that said, oh, with that MOS, you can walk right out and make $100,000.
Yeah.
But then once you get in, you realize, well, I need to have all these certifications that the Marine Corps doesn't give me.
Yeah.
They give me the training, they give me the knowledge, but they don't give me the certification. So really, I can't just walk out and make $100,000.
Yeah.
You always want to be prepared no matter what, too, for a step down, because you're going to have to reprove yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
So you might think to yourself, I want to make 50 or 75 grand, but I might have to start out making 45 or 60, because that's just the way the thing works.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I think people need to really understand that they don't when they're veterans is really understanding how compensation on the outside works. It's more than just a number. Things like healthcare insurance that costs money or doesn't cost money depending on the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Things like your commute time. There's so many things. Your retirement plans that may or may not be there. So many things that go into the total compensation, way more than just this is how much the salary is.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, talk to people.
Yeah.
Talk to people early and talk to people a lot that do those types of things, because that's the best way to find out, no kidding, what that landscape's like in that profession.
Do you have any advice for those who had some blemishes on their records in the service, those who got NJPs, DBRs, or maybe been court-martialed?
No, I think if you had NJPs in the service, I mean, really, that's not a big deal when you get out. Depending on the job you're looking for. I mean, if you are looking for a position with a security clearance and you've lost your clearance, and that can be a big thing. Mm-hmm. And trying to get the clearance back can be really, really tough if it's even possible. But if you're looking to go strictly from the military to the private sector, and you did one tour and you got an NJP when you were a Lance Corporal, and you still got out as a Lance Corporal, but you are moving on to do other things, as long as you've got an honorable discharge, that's pretty straightforward. The NJPs aren't going to hurt you. If you've got other than honorable discharges, I think they're going to hurt you less and less depending on the job you're applying for. And the younger you are, the less problems it's going to be. Okay. Because you're going to be starting at the bottom anyway. Mm-hmm. You do just have to realize, no matter what, too, that in the end, all hiring decisions on the outside are risk management decisions. Okay. They're making a risk management decision on, if I hire you, is it going to work out? So if you're looking at entry-level stuff, there's a little bit less risk there, because they're actually assuming that so many entry-level folks aren't going to make it anyway. Mm. But as you get up higher into middle management and then higher into higher management, what it takes to replace those people costs a lot more. So there's a higher risk management issue that they're thinking about for those folks.
Well, I also learned something in my process, and that was that I was too honest. And I had a gentleman who was sitting with me at a Starbucks interviewing me. He had told me, maybe, if you get this interview, you don't mention XYZ. And so, but that's me. Like, I want to be as transparent as possible. And this is what I'm bringing to the table. I want you to be able to trust me, XYZ. There is a thing of being too honest in marketing yourself, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there is. We touched on a little bit earlier in the conversation. We're talking about, not bringing up things that don't pertain to the job. Yep. I remember one job interview that I went on early. It was one of the first big job interviews I went on when I was still active duty, though. And, and they asked a question about tell me about a time that you had to make a really difficult decision, right? And I thought to myself, oh, this is easy. And so I go off on this long story about, we were in Afghanistan, and this guy said he was going to commit suicide because he didn't want to go into combat, and blah, 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 blah. And what am I going to do? And I had to figure it out, but I couldn't leave him, Mm-hmm. And then I realized that I'm just telling this crazy story, and these people look at me like, what the hell is this guy talking about? I'm scaring them. Yeah. When really I would have been much better off talking about a difficult decision that I had to make about whether I should recruit this doctor versus that doctor, because that was the position was for recruiting doctors for a hospital. Yeah. So don't be so honest to answer the question, like, which one of those was really more difficult? Well, the kid that wanted to commit suicide in Afghanistan was a much more difficult, of course, dilemma. Of course. But that's not what they wanted to hear. So you can be too honest with those things. Yeah. But the other thing that kind of goes, and you're touching on it a bit when you say that, this is who you are. The more you can network, and the more you can do this early, the more you can find out what kind of a good cultural fit you're going to be with an organization. Small companies are different than bigger companies. They have different rules and different way of doing things. And what might make you happy in one might make somebody else very unhappy, and vice versa. So when you can do that networking, you can do that. But when you get out and you don't have a job and you start looking for just the first job that comes to mind, that's why a lot of veterans get out and they don't fit in their first job, because they just take the first thing that's going to give them money. Yeah. And many times they realize that, I'm too honest for this place, or I'm too straight-laced. I'm too rigid, and they're too loose and too much having fun. That's not me. Yeah. So that networking part early can help you figure out the right cultural fit for the job that you're going to end up with. Yeah. I have a few more questions, and I want to honor your time. So one of the things I want to ask, this should be quick, clearance expiration dates. If I get out and I decide I want to go to college today, and I do my 4 years, get my bachelor's, maybe 3 years, push through,
how long does my clearance from when I separate from the service to the expiration date, how long do I have to kind of look for a job that requires a clearance? And if it has expired, how easy is it for a company to establish that clearance?
Well, first of all, if you go for 2 years without working with your clearance, then it's going to expire.
Okay.
So it's, even if you had a secret clearance, but then you get out, but you haven't done anything to keep it, to use that secret clearance, if you didn't have a job that involved a secret clearance, then it's gonna go away. Now, the question of how easy is it to get it back? It's, number one, it's difficult in the sense that it takes forever for the government to process those things. It can be up to a year sometimes, or even longer, to get a clearance set up. And the reason this is an issue for a lot of organizations is government contractors that are dealing with this, they get paid by farming you out to do a job. So the government says, I need someone to do this task, and I will give you $75 an hour for someone to do this task, right? And so the company hires you and says, I need you to do this task, and I need you to do it, and I'll pay you $50 an hour to do that task, and then they keep the extra 25. I mean, I'm just making numbers up here, but that's how the money goes back to the organization.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have the clearance, they can't put you on the task. So they're not going to keep paying you $50 an hour to not do anything and bring them money back in.
Correct.
And they can't do that for a year while they wait for your clearance to maybe come back good or maybe not come back good. Now, some really big organizations, they might be able to do something where they've got cleared and non-cleared work, so they can take you and put you over here for a while they wait. You're making money for the company, and they can move you over. Smaller companies have a harder time doing that. So when it comes to your security clearance, if you want to leverage that, I mean, the smartest thing to do is, if you want to leverage your security clearance, is try to get a position that utilizes it as soon as you get out of the military, so that you're still doing those things. And if you get out and you're going to go to college because you've got a secret clearance or something like that, if you can, there's some part-time jobs, for folks that still require a security clearance.
Yeah.
And it might not even be a very glamorous job sometimes, but I've seen people take those jobs while they're in school just to maintain the clearance while they're working on their education.
Gotcha. Finish this sentence regarding transition. Stop listening to your peers when they tell you.
Stop listening to your peers when they tell you it's going to be easy.
Yeah, right. Yes. Stop listening to them when they say that.
And because your peers, when you're in the service, many people, they think it's going to be easy. I know folks that think those things, and they're also the ones who aren't doing anything to really push themselves out, or they think that just getting a degree, I've got a degree. I mean, I got my master's degree while I was still in the Navy, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember everybody telling me that I was going to have it made. You got your master's degree? Dude, they're going to throw money at you. The degree wasn't what got me the job. What got me this position was me getting off my butt and going out and meeting people while I was still in the service, to the point that I had somebody from clearedjobs.net start to look out for me. I mean, she was taking me to places and just showing me off to people to try to help me get a job. And then it turns out that when I got out, they had a job opening at their company.
Yeah.
But that's what helped me more than the degree was nice. The degree probably made me more marketable, but nobody was going to hire me just because I had a degree. And you weren't going to pull that one on me again, because that's what I tried. That's what I tried to fall for 20 years earlier. Yeah.
Now, one of the last questions are, so being that you are a veteran who has gone through the transition process and had to find yourself, and I mean, you relatively had a smooth transition, but you did have, I know we didn't touch on it, you had some decisions you had to make because you're a man who's married and your wife also has a career, XYZ, long story short. You transitioned and you are here where you're at today. What advice would you tell vets who are struggling to find themselves on their transition path right now?
I think the advice I would give people who are trying to figure out what their path is to not discount anything, to keep on and to keep meeting people and telling them your story. Mm-hmm. Because the more you can tell, the more you can get to really know people and let them know who you really are, you'll be surprised that when the other people are going to come up and say, I think you'd be good at this job. Mm-hmm. For me, it was sales. It could be something else that you never would have thought of. But they're not going to know those. They're not going to be able to offer you those suggestions once they really know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, people just kind of give you random suggestions. Oh, you should look into this or you should look into that.
Yeah.
But if you're struggling to find yourself, what you really want to do, then what you need to do is you need to get to know more and more people, and you need to get to really have some significant conversations. Open up about what you've done and what you're looking for and those types of things, and then be open to their possible suggestions of other places to look. So that's kind of what it comes down to.
Okay. Is there any contact information that you'd like to share? If somebody listening today wants to get a hold of you specifically, can they reach out to you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can look for Bob Wheeler under LinkedIn with it says I'm right there with clearedjobs.net, helping government contractors find cleared folks. So reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to do that. If you want to send me an email, you can send an email to bwheeler@clearedjobs.net, and let me know that you heard the podcast or something like that. Especially on LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect with anybody on any vets, especially. I think it's important that the more we can just know people, the better off we're all going to be.
And can you find out if there are job fairs coming up on LinkedIn? Is that where you post them at?
Yeah, you can find that out. You can follow clearedjobs.net on LinkedIn. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. Actually, you can follow me on Twitter too @SailorDoc if you're a Twitter person. Any of those things. But our marketing team puts out when the job fairs are coming up. Our next one's February 2nd in Tyson's Corner. But they'll put out when they're going to be, and they're going to also put out what kind of focus they're going to be. But if you're a job seeker with a security clearance and you want to know more about how clearedjobs.net works specifically, man, feel free to shoot me an email and ask that question. I'm happy to let you know how the system was not a secret. But the more you understand how recruiters use it, how they use that tool, the better off you're going to be able to, as far as positioning yourself to be found.
Gotcha. Well, is there anything else that you have to tap into today, or did we kind of touch everything?
No, it's been a great conversation, Robert. I look forward to keeping up with you and checking other things out. But I think we pretty much covered it. I appreciate the time.
No, I'm blessed to have had you on. Believe me, I can probably sit here for another 6 hours and you and I talk. But I'm very appreciative of you coming and spending time with me on here and reaching out to those who are looking to better their lives outside the military. So, Bob Wheeler, from clearedjobs.net, account manager, I am ecstatic. So I hope that we are able to reach out to people and help people do something better with whatever they're going through right now. So thank you again for coming on. I'm glad that you've tuned in to You're the Vet again. I hope that you get to share this, and I hope that something that was said today helps you personally on your journey of transition. So with that being said, have a good week, and I will talk to you later.